My name is Gloria, and I turned 70 this year. No big party, no balloons tied to the mailbox, just a soft breeze coming off the marsh and the usual creak of my porch swing as I rocked slowly with my coffee. I wore the yellow cardigan Harold always said made me look like sunlight. It's too warm for it in August, but I wanted to feel held. At around 9:30 that morning, the phone rang. It wasn't a ringtone, not like the bright, cheerful jingle people have these days. Just the old landline's dry, clipped trill. That sound used to mean good things, birthday wishes, neighbors checking in, my daughter Elise calling from college with stories about finals, and late-night coffee runs. But that morning when I saw her name on the caller ID, my stomach tightened. I already knew. It wouldn't be a real call. It would be a gesture, a ticked box. "Hey, Mom, happy birthday." Her voice was sugar-coated breezy. "Sorry, can't talk long. We're actually flying to Asheville this weekend. Took Dad and my in-laws up to the mountains for a surprise. You know how much they love the cooler weather." I murmured something like, "That's nice." She didn't ask what I was doing, didn't say she'd stop by next week. She didn't even mention the cake. "Anyway, we're boarding now. Love you." Click. The line went dead. I held the receiver in my hand long after the dial tone began to hum. That lonely gray little sound filled the room like fog. I replaced it gently, like it might bruise if I wasn't careful. I sat back down in my armchair, facing the window where the sun streaked through my lace curtains, the same curtains Elise helped me hem one summer when she was 13, and trying to learn to sew. Outside, the birds were still going about their business. The neighbor's dog barked at a squirrel, and the world spun on like it didn't just forget me. She hadn't said a word about the car. That was yesterday. I saw it on Facebook. A big white SUV parked in her in-laws' driveway with a bow on top, big enough to wrap a wedding. Her husband smiling beside it, one arm around his father. Elise had posted the picture with the caption, "He's always been there for us. He deserves something special." I had stared at that caption for a long time. My finger hovered over the screen. Like, not today. Funny thing is, I didn't feel angry. Not then. Anger is sharp. It burns hot and fast. What I felt was quieter, heavier. It was like sitting in a room you thought was warm and realizing your sweater isn't doing the job. Like finding a draft you didn't know was there, sneaking under the door and curling around your ankles. For dinner I made myself some soup. From a can, just opened it, warmed it up, poured it into a chipped bowl I keep meaning to replace. I ate it with crackers, the saltine kind. There was a pound cake I had picked up earlier that week, just in case someone came by. No one did. So after dinner I sliced one piece. It was dry. I sat on the back steps with that slice of cake on a paper napkin, watching the sky dim to that purplish color the marsh gets just before the mosquitoes come out in full. The cicadas sang their little hearts out. The roses in my garden, Harold's roses, were starting to droop. It's been too hot, and I haven't been out there as much as I should. The truth is, I'd been holding on to hope, even after everything, even when I knew better, because hope doesn't announce itself like faith does. It's sneakier. It curls up in your chest and sits there quiet, like a child waiting for the doorbell to ring. But it didn't ring, and what came instead was a phone call too short and too sweet. That night I lay in bed listening to the old ceiling fan whir. I could hear the pine trees brushing against the side of the house, like fingers scratching softly at the walls. This house may be small, and the floorboards may creak like tired knees, but it has held me through more storms than anyone knows. As I closed my eyes, I whispered aloud, just softly enough for God, and maybe Harold to hear. She gave him a car. She gave me a call. And then I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because something inside me had shifted. I wasn't crying. I was planning. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. This house was never meant to be permanent. Harold and I bought it after he came back from the mill accident when we thought it'd just be for a little while. Something to get us on our feet. a small three-room cottage tucked behind the old oak trees on the quiet side of the inlet. No one paid much attention to this part of town then. Folks called it marshy like it was an insult, but we loved the sound the frogs made at night and how the fireflies lit up the back porch like Christmas in July. We figured 5 years, maybe 6, and we'd trade up for a newer place across the river, but life didn't go that way. We stayed, and it turned out staying wasn't settling. It was building. This house is wood and nails, yes, but it's also stories and prayers. It's the smell of Harold's aftershave in the old bathroom drawer, and the faded G and E etched into the kitchen door frame from when Elise learned how to spell her name with a plastic alphabet set. It's the sag in the third step on the staircase that squeaks like a gossip and the way the hallway smells like cedar no matter the season. It's the place I cooked in during every storm, where I rocked Elise through fevers and breakups and braces, where I watched Harold's body grow slower but his love never waver. It's where I became a widow and kept being a mother. After that phone call on my birthday, I found myself just walking through the house. Not doing anything, not cleaning or fixing, just walking. Like I needed to check on it, room by room. The front room still held his old recliner, brown leather, cracked on the arms like dry skin. I ran my fingers along the tier on the right cushion. He never wanted to replace it, said it molded to him like a second spine. The little lamp on the side table flickered once when I turned it on, then held steady. I took that as a good sign. In the kitchen, the same stove we'd bought secondhand in '89 still worked. Elise had helped Harold install it. He'd lifted her up so she could tighten the last screw herself. I helped build this kitchen, she used to say, proudly to anyone who came over. I stood there, hands on the counter, looking at the same window I'd stared through 1,000 times while rinsing dishes. You can see the backyard from there. The peach tree Harold planted on our 10th anniversary is still standing. Leaning a bit, but strong, just like me. I went upstairs and opened Elise's old room. I hadn't touched it in years. The lilac wallpaper was peeling in the corners. The bed was still made with her old quilt, yellow squares with little pink flowers. There was a half-empty bottle of perfume on the dresser, something fruity and cheap that she'd loved as a teenager. One of her high school trophies stood crooked on a shelf, best original essay. I remember staying up with her the night before that contest, making flashcards and cheering her on when she thought her words weren't good enough. She hadn't asked for anything from that room in years, not one memento, not one box. It was like she had erased the girl who once lived here, just wiped her away like chalk from a board. I sat on the edge of her bed and let my body rest. It's not something I let myself do often, rest in stillness. But that day I needed to feel the weight of the house around me, the way it settled, the way it held. I realized something in that moment. Elise didn't just forget my birthday. She'd forgotten where she came from. And worse, she wanted me to forget too. That little call that clipped happy birthday, it wasn't just neglect, it was preparation. The same way you gently close a book before you put it in a box and store it away. I don't know when exactly the fear turned into something else. But somewhere between Elise's voice in my ear and the sound of the wind outside that kitchen window, a kind of clarity settled in. This house, this crooked, creaky, memory-filled home wasn't just a place I lived. It was proof of everything I had survived, everything I had built, everything I was. And I'll be damned if anyone was going to write me out of it like a forgotten chapter. That night as I climbed into bed, I laid my hand on Harold's side of the mattress. It's still a little softer there, still dips like it's waiting for him to return. I whispered out loud, "I'm still here, Harold. I'm still standing in the middle of what we built." The moonlight spilled through the window in silver lines. The fan clicked rhythmically overhead, and I closed my eyes, not with sadness, but with certainty. The house I never left was never going to leave me. Grief doesn't always knock you over like a wave. Sometimes it's just the sound of your own fork scraping against an empty plate. It was 2 days after my birthday. The cake sat in my fridge, untouched, a quiet little insult wrapped in cellophane. Elise hadn't sent it. I knew that. She probably didn't even know her husband had picked it up, and if she did, it wouldn't have mattered. They must have stopped by the grocery store on the way to the mountains, grabbed something quick, something cheap. The frosting was smeared, blue and white, with the words Happy B-Day scrawled like a last-minute apology. No name, no note. It looked like a cake you'd bring to a coworker you barely knew. And even that would have come with a plastic fork. I sat at the kitchen table that morning, staring at it. There's something about those tiny moments, the ones no one ever sees, the plate you put out just in case someone stops by, the way you straighten a picture frame, no one else even notices. I sliced one small piece and took a bite. It tasted like chemicals, sweet and sharp, like sugar trying too hard to be affection. I spit it out, not angrily, just tired. Then I wrapped the slice back up, put it in the fridge again. I couldn't throw it away. Not yet. Not because I wanted it, but because it felt like a line I wasn't ready to cross. That afternoon, I logged into Facebook. My old tablet takes a while to load, makes a noise like it's catching its breath before each page turns. There it was, Elise, laughing in a photo, her husband beside her, their wine glasses clinking against a mountain sunset. The caption said something about making memories with the best people. The best people. I guess I used to be one of them. I kept scrolling. Another post, this time a video. Her father-in-law in a crisp white shirt, his smile big and proud, as Elise handed him a key. A new car parked behind them. Silver, shiny, the kind of vehicle with a backup camera and seat warmers and all those fancy things. Elise beamed at him, kissed his cheek. The caption read, "You've done so much for us. You deserve this and more." I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath. Not out of jealousy. It wasn't about the car. It wasn't even about the price. It was the weight of it, the thought, the intention. Because I remembered a different day, 20 years earlier. I had just finished my third shift that week at the diner. The one off Main, where the coffee burned hot and the tips ran cold. Elise had forgotten her science project at school, and Harold had been gone 6 months. I remember standing in line at the pharmacy with blisters on my heels, a paper bag of cold medicine in one hand, and her favorite candy in the other. No one filmed it. No one clapped. There were no captions, no bows, just a mother doing what she had to do, because that's what we do, isn't it? I got up from the kitchen table and walked to the hall closet. I hadn't opened it in a while. It smelled like dust and linen spray. At the very back, behind the winter coats, was Harold's old metal toolbox. He always said, "You can tell what kind of man you are by how you keep your tools." Well, Harold's tools were rusted in places, but always organized. I sat on the floor right there, the cool tile biting through my nightgown, and opened the box. Inside were the usual things: tape measure, screwdrivers, a dented tin of nails, and underneath, a manila envelope. I almost didn't open it, but something in my chest, something quiet and sharp, told me to. Inside were papers, yellowed slightly, but still crisp. The top one was a copy of Harold's will. I remembered Elise saying she had taken care of everything after the funeral. I was too numb then to argue, too tired to ask questions, but now, with the house so quiet and the cake still untouched in the fridge, I had the time to look, and what I found made my blood run cold. There was a line. I had never seen it before. It named me as the beneficiary of his pension. Another line mentioned a savings account, a small property out near the inlet, none of which I had access to, none of which I had ever seen. I sat on the cold floor with those papers in my lap. My hands didn't tremble, my eyes didn't blur. I just felt something inside me settle, like a stone falling into place. Later that night, I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a plate. The house was still, save for the faint creak of the porch swing in the wind. I looked out toward the backyard, where Harold's rose bush still clung to life, and I realized something that struck me so clearly. I said it out loud, just to hear it spoken. They think I'm small, but I've been carrying this family on my back my whole damn life. When you spend your life being quiet, people think you aren't paying attention. They mistake silence for sleep. But I've always been wide awake. I just pick my moments. The morning after I found Harold's will, I brewed my coffee, stronger than usual. 1 sugar, no cream. I needed it to taste bitter. I needed to stay sharp. The envelope sat beside me on the kitchen table, its flap open like a mouth that finally dared to speak. I reread every word slower this time. The language was stiff and legal, but Harold's voice still came through. He hadn't been a fancy man, but he was exacting. His I love yous came in the form of fresh batteries in the smoke detector and checking the tire pressure in my old sedan. This will, this was his last list of to-dos. The pension was supposed to go to me. The savings account too. And that property? A plot of land I'd never once laid eyes on, listed clear as day under both our names. How did I not know about it? Simple. I hadn't asked. And Elise? She hadn't told me. She just handled it. After Harold's passing, things were foggy. You think you'll remember every moment of loss, but you don't. Not the edges. Not the exact shapes. I remember the funeral. Elise standing beside me, a steady hand on my arm like I might collapse. I remember the pastor's voice, low, soft, like the hum of a distant engine. I remember signing some papers. She told me they were just for filing. That she'd make sure everything got squared away with the bank, with the company, with the union. I remember trusting her. That trust felt like a crack now, a jagged little hairline that had spread, quietly and completely, through the bones of my life. I started digging, not in anger, not yet. In curiosity, in something that felt like survival. In the hall closet was a box labeled receipts, taxes, etc. Harold's handwriting, all caps. I pulled it out and spread everything across the floor like I was working on a puzzle. Old bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns. Some letters from the credit union with his name on them. Piece by piece, I matched up numbers. Followed trails. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew what I wasn't seeing. There were no records showing that the pension had ever come to me. No deposits. No letters addressed to me. Nothing. But there were bank statements in Elise's name. 2 actually. Different addresses. 1 P.O. box in Charleston. Another linked to a firm I'd never heard of. The dates lined up like footsteps on a porch. I took out Harold's Bible. It's an old cracked thing, soft at the corners from use. He kept little things in there, index cards, business cards, the occasional love note he didn't want me to find right away. There, tucked inside Psalm 90, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom, was a business card. Faded. The name read, Nate Pearson, law clerk, Coastal Legal Aid. My eyes narrowed. Nate. Short for Nathaniel. He was the boy from down the road. The one Elise used to babysit. The one with the lopsided haircut and a math brain that could have scared Einstein. Harold used to help him with his college essays. Gave him rides. Bought him his first necktie when he got that internship at the county courthouse. That was over 20 years ago. I almost put the card back. But then I thought, what would Harold want me to do? And so I called. The number still worked. A woman picked up, cheerful and rushed. I introduced myself. Gloria Reynolds, I said, Harold's wife. There was a pause, then the sound of papers being shuffled. Just a moment, she said. He'll want to take this one. A few minutes later I heard a familiar voice, older now, steadier. Miss Gloria, he said. Is it really you? I swallowed hard. I think I need a lawyer, Nate. And I think my daughter might have stolen my husband's legacy. He didn't ask me to repeat myself. He didn't rush to comfort me either. He just said, quietly, do you still have his paperwork? I do. Then we're not starting from scratch. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed. That manila envelope in my lap like it was made of glass. I thought about the car. Elise gave her father-in-law, the smile she gave him, the pride. And I wondered when it was that she stopped seeing me as her mother and started seeing me as something she could step over. But more than that, I wondered this. How long had she been planning this? And what had I missed while I was busy baking birthday cakes and trusting her voice on the other end of the line? The papers didn't just tell me what I had lost. They told me what I had left, and maybe, just maybe, they told me it wasn't too late. I always thought awakening would feel like light pouring in through a window, like something warm, or at least sudden, but mine felt like sitting in a cold library chair, staring at a glowing screen that kept asking me for passwords I didn't have. My fingers fumbled at first. The keys were too small, the text too bright, but I showed up every morning, just after sunrise. When the public library was quiet and smelled like lemon floor polish and old paperbacks, I'd never needed a computer before. Harold had kept everything in neat little paper files. Elise handled the rest. Now I was handling it. Nathaniel didn't rush me. He never spoke to me like I was fragile or like he was doing me a favor. He spoke to me like I mattered, like the person who used to rock him to sleep on my couch had a name, a mind, and a right to every damn cent she was owed. Every day, he gave me a task. Search for the trust account activity. Make note of the names that show up more than once. Pull all emails or texts Elise ever sent about your finances. Ask your doctor for your full health records from the last 5 years. He told me we needed to build a wall, not a story. Stories are lovely, but paper wins in court. That first week I opened a notebook. A simple one, spiral bound, with a floral cover I bought from the drugstore for $1. I wrote everything down. Dates, notes, questions I didn't yet understand. At the top of page 1 I wrote, "This is my fight." It wasn't dramatic. There were no movie music swells, no tears, just a steady hand, and an old woman who had been underestimated one too many times. The hardest assignment Nate gave me was the one that made me feel like a stranger in my own skin. He said, "You've got to act like she's already won. Let her believe you folded." I hesitated. "I'm not used to lying," I told him. He nodded, slow and serious. "Then don't lie. Just act tired. Act done. Make it look easy for her." So I did. When Elise called again, her voice syrupy, sweet with concern, I softened mine to match. "I think you're right," I said, letting a little sigh carry the sentence. "Maybe it is time. That senior place you mentioned sounds peaceful." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. "Oh, Mom, I'm so relieved. You'll love it. They have a garden. Bingo night. It'll be good for you." She spoke to me the way someone might speak to a potted plant. Something living, yes, but not listening. "I'm just so glad you're finally seeing reason," she said. I said nothing, because I didn't need to. She was already talking like the victory was hers. From that point on, I played the part. When she asked if I'd spoken to the real estate agent she'd arranged, I told her I had. When she asked if I needed help sorting my belongings, I said I'd already begun packing. She was thrilled. She thought I was handing her the keys. She didn't know I was documenting every call, every visit, every little comment she made about liquidating assets and consolidating accounts. She didn't know I had spoken to my bank and pulled 10 years of account history. She didn't know I had met with my doctor, who wrote me a clean cognitive health report that said, in crisp black ink, that my memory and decision-making were perfectly intact. I became a shadow in my own story. Quiet, careful, watching. I went to different post offices to send Nate the documents. Never from the one near my house. Sometimes I mailed them from across the river. Sometimes from the next town over. I even slipped one into the drop box outside the grocery store on a Wednesday afternoon, right after buying lemons. Each envelope was a brick in the wall we were building. And day by day, I began to feel taller. Funny how dignity doesn't roar. It doesn't show up in one big speech or a slammed door. It shows up in the steadiness of your hand. While you highlight a line in a bank statement, it shows up when you hear someone lie to your face, and you smile because you already know the truth. It shows up when you look in the mirror and realize you aren't angry anymore. You're ready. I called Nate that Friday evening. The house was dark, just the porch light on and the sound of crickets outside. "I'm ready," I said. He didn't ask what I meant. He said, "Then we move to the next step." And just like that, my quiet awakening was complete. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building a case. And the hardest part wasn't playing weak. It was pretending I didn't see what was coming. There's a particular kind of acting that women like me are good at: being small, being agreeable, nodding like we didn't catch the insult when we heard it just fine. Elise had no idea how much of my life I'd spent perfecting that performance. So when she came to the house that Sunday, armed with a binder and a too bright smile, I welcomed her in with sweet tea and my softest voice. "I know this is hard," she said, her heels clicking across my floor like ownership, "but it's for the best," she said, "best the way someone says inevitable." She spread the binder on the table like it was scripture: charts, pamphlets, glossy images of the senior living community. It looked more like a luxury hotel than a place to wait out your years. "Chef-prepared meals," she said, tapping the page, "on-site physical therapy, emergency call buttons in every room. And best of all, no more maintenance, no more worrying about this old house." She gestured around the room like she was pointing at garbage. I smiled, small and quiet. "I'm tired," I said. "That sounds peaceful." She smiled back, satisfied, already sealing the victory in her mind. That's the thing about people who think they're smarter than you. They always stop paying attention the moment they think you've surrendered. A few days later, she sent a man named Roy to the house. Real estate agent, shiny shoes, hair too perfect. Didn't even knock gently. 3 loud raps like he owned the place already. "Ma'am," he said, not quite looking at me, "just here for some photos and measurements. Shouldn't take long." He called it property, not your home. He walked through the living room like he was measuring square footage instead of memories. I followed behind him, quiet as a shadow. Every step he took was another weight, pressing on the decision I'd already made. They weren't just pushing me out, they were planning to erase me. Nathaniel told me to keep collecting, so I did. I documented every visit, every call, every text. I used a cheap little notebook with a red cover, nothing fancy, but it felt like armor. Every time Elise talked to me like I was too frail to understand what was happening, I wrote it down. "Don't stress yourself with the paperwork, Mom. I'll just take care of the details. It's easier this way. You've earned the right not to worry anymore." All of it sounded like kindness, but it wasn't. It was dismissal dressed as mercy. Then came the trap. Nathaniel said, "We need something recent. Intent, not just what she did after Harold died, what she's doing now." So I made a call. I put the tremble back in my voice. "Baby," I said, "I found something in the attic. Looks like old savings bonds. I don't know if they're worth anything, but I'm confused." I described the fake documents Nathaniel had printed. Harmless, expired, nothing real. But Elise didn't ask for details. She didn't say, "Let me help you understand them." She said, "Don't do anything. I'll come get them." Her voice dropped into that sharp, no-nonsense tone, the one she uses when she's sure she's in charge. "You'll mess it up," she added. "Just wait." I didn't say a word. Nathaniel's office recorded the whole call. She showed up the next afternoon. No warning, no "can I come by?" Just the sound of tires on gravel and a knock that was more demand than greeting. She stood on my porch with a smile and a pen. "Thought I'd save you the trouble," she said. Then she handed me a stack of papers. "This," she said, "is a general power of attorney. It'll let me take care of everything without bothering you." She said bothering, like my life was an interruption. I took the pen, let my hand shake just a little, signed it. She smiled, folded it, slipped it into her bag like it was a prize. She didn't know that across the street, in an unmarked sedan, Nathaniel's private investigator was taking photos of the entire exchange, every moment, every angle, every grim little detail. After she left, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just went to the kitchen and washed my hands, slowly, like I was rinsing off something foul. I looked at my reflection in the window above the sink. My shoulders were tired. My eyes were sharp. "She thinks I'm gone," I said softly. But I wasn't gone. I was in position. The bait was taken. The mask was on. The next move wasn't hers. It was mine. It didn't happen in my kitchen, or in Elisa's sleek downtown office, or even in court. It happened in a beige conference room with cheap carpet and a window that didn't open. The air was too cold, the chairs were too soft, the kind of room built for people with money to fight behind closed doors. Elise sat across from me. Her lawyer, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, fussed with his tie. She didn't look at me. Not at first. She was busy flipping through a folder like she was about to negotiate a business deal. I had nothing in front of me but my hands, folded, steady, wearing the same silver ring Harold gave me on our 30th anniversary. Next to me sat Nathaniel, calm, professional, no emotion on his face, just the quiet patience of someone who already knew how the meeting would end. The mediator gave the floor to Nathaniel. He didn't waste time. No accusations, no speeches, just the projector. He pressed a button, and the wall lit up with the first scan, Harold's original will. The real one, not the copy Elise had handed the probate court. This one had the signature, the date, and the line naming me as sole beneficiary to everything. Then came the trust account documents, every withdrawal, every transfer. The money that was supposed to keep me secure was funneled into companies I'd never heard of, shell firms Elise had created, using borrowed names and rented addresses, each name highlighted, each date aligned. 15 years of quiet theft, shown in red and black. Elise's face started to shift, a crack in the mask. But Nathaniel wasn't done. He played the audio. It filled the room like a cold wind, my voice thin and uncertain, describing the savings bonds I'd found. Her voice, sharp and impatient, telling me not to touch them, telling me I'd mess it up. Then came the photos, the ones of her handing me the power of attorney form on my own porch, the look on her face, the pen in my hand, the body language of control and manipulation captured in still frames. When the last photo faded from the screen, silence dropped over the room like a stone in deep water. No one spoke. Even her lawyer looked down. I looked at Elise, and finally she looked back. There was no victory in my expression. No smugness, just a quiet stare. The kind a mother gives when she's not angry anymore. Just done. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her eyes darted to her lawyer, but he offered nothing. Her voice, when it came, was small, cracked. "Mom, I can explain." I shook my head gently. "No, baby, you can't." There was no yelling, no scene, just the truth, sitting between us like a stack of bricks. "You took what wasn't yours," I said, "and you thought I'd never notice." She didn't deny it, because she couldn't. The wall of evidence was too tall now, and her ladder was gone. What followed wasn't a negotiation. It was a surrender. To avoid a trial, and the headlines that would follow, Elise agreed to a full civil settlement. Every dollar she had siphoned from Harold's trust fund, returned, 15 years of compound interest, calculated to the penny, paid, and more, an additional sum for emotional damages, not just for what she stole, but for the quiet way she tried to erase me. But none of that was the most important part. The most important part was the one-page document she signed that day, a confession, public, legal, final. It admitted her breach of fiduciary duty, her misuse of power, her theft. Nathaniel made sure it was filed with the court, not just for me, for Harold, for every small kindness he gave that woman growing up, for every Sunday lunch, every birthday card, every gallon of gas he paid for when she was starting out. His name was cleared, and mine was finally heard. The news traveled fast, not in the papers, but in whispers. At church, people started calling again. At the grocery store, women nodded at me, like I'd done something they'd only dreamed of doing. And Elise, her silence was louder than any apology. A few weeks later, she came to my porch, alone. She didn't come inside. She stood there, holding the screen door open with one hand, the other twisting her wedding ring around her finger. "I'm sorry," she said. I believe she meant it, but meaning something isn't the same as undoing it. "You can keep your sorry," I said gently. "You've been spending too much of mine," and I closed the door. After everything, I didn't move. Not to the senior home Elise had picked out, not out of state, not even down the block. I stayed, in the same little house with the crooked fence and the creaky stairs and the backyard that still smells like rosemary after the rain, but the house isn't tired anymore. I hired a contractor, a good man from church named Lionel, who listens more than he talks. We started small, new paint, warm yellow walls that glow soft in the morning light. Then came the new cabinets, a gas stove, and the garden deck I'd always wanted but never asked for. Not fancy, just right. For the first time in my life, I made a space not for duty, not for raising a child, not for survival, but for myself. In the backyard, the peach tree is thriving again. I hired a young landscaping crew, 3 college girls, all with sunburned shoulders and dirt under their nails. They brought the garden back to life. Lavender in neat rows, tomatoes in raised beds, hibiscus near the fence where Harold used to stand with his coffee. Every morning now, I walk barefoot on the stone path. I sip tea on the porch and listen to the city wake up, birds calling, mail truck rumbling, someone's dog always barking too early. There's peace in the quiet, but peace alone isn't purpose. So I did something I never thought I would. I opened a new bank account, in my name only. Just Gloria, no cosigner, no emergency contact, no daughter listed on the account. Then I called Nathaniel. I said I want to build something, not in spite of what happened, but because of it. We created the Reynolds Fund, a scholarship for older women, 50 and up, who've been taken advantage of. Women who need a second chance, or maybe a first. Women who've been told they're too old, too slow, too late. It's small for now, but it's real, and every single check comes with a handwritten note from me. I tell them what Harold once told me: you don't need permission to matter. The church heard about it, then the grocery store ladies, then the pastor asked if I'd consider starting a group. So now every Tuesday we meet in the community hall, just a handful of women, most of us with gray hair and stories we've kept too long inside our ribs. We talk, we laugh, we bring pound cake and store-bought coffee, and a whole lot of truth. One woman, Anita, shared how her grandson had been draining her pension with a debit card he borrowed 3 years ago. Another, Denise, had signed away her home without realizing what the papers meant. Now, they have copies of their documents. They ask questions. They say no. We named the group after Harold and me, the Reynolds Table, because that's what it is, a table where women sit together, tell the truth, and pass the strength around like it's cornbread. One night, after a long meeting filled with laughter and quiet tears, I sat on my back deck and looked at the stars. And I thought about Elise, about what she took, and what she couldn't. She took my trust. She took Harold's money. She tried to take this house, but she couldn't take my name. She couldn't take my memory. She couldn't take the way I still dance alone when Ain't No Mountain High Enough comes on the radio. She couldn't take me. The funny thing is, I don't feel angry anymore. Not even sad. I feel awake. At 70, I've learned the difference between being quiet and being silenced. And I've decided I'm done with silence. Last month I booked a trip. Just for me. Not the cheapest cabin. Not the back of the bus. A train ride through the Blue Ridge Mountains. A window seat. A suitcase with wheels. A brand new journal tucked into my purse. At the station, a woman looked at me and asked, "Is someone traveling with you?" I smiled and said, "No, just me." And you know something? That wasn't loneliness. That was freedom. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. If my story reminds you of someone you know, maybe your grandmother, your mother, maybe even yourself, I hope you'll share it. Because we've all got stories like this, hiding behind polite smiles and Sunday phone calls that don't last long enough. And if you're still quiet, still waiting for your turn to speak, let me say this. I see you. You are not forgotten. You are not finished. You are not invisible. You are still here, just like me.